So here we go with our disco ball costumes. So you're going to need a Pilates ball, which will come with a pump. I'm using a polystyrene ball here. It's a little bit smaller than the one that you'll be using, but the Pilates ball will work better than the polystyrene ball. So you pump up your Pilates ball, and the very first thing you're going to do is take a strip of card, like I have here, and run that all the way around the ball, so you can roughly find the middle point of your sphere. Now the Pilates balls, they usually come with little lines going around them, so it might be really easy to find the middle point. If not, a rough guess is fine. These don't have to be super exact. The second thing you're going to need is, I'm using a plant pot. I use it a lot when I'm doing these kind of things. It's really heavy. You could also use a Pyrex bowl from your kitchen, something with quite a wide lip on it, and that just stops that ball from wobbling around everywhere, which can become really annoying. So we're going to do 2 halves of this at the same time, and then we're going to separate them off. Because you have the Pilates ball, you'll also have the option of letting a bit of air out if you're struggling in any way to get these apart. But hopefully that you won't need to do that. So the first thing, as I said, you're going to get a bit of cardboard, and it's going to go all the way around your Pilates ball. The second thing you're going to do, once you've taped that in place, you're going to take some cellophane, and you're going to cellophane over the entire ball, so all the way around. And this is going to protect your ball when we start sticking on the brown paper on top of this. It won't stick to the Pilates ball on you, so it's just like a protective thing, and make it easier to pop these off as well. So that's step number 1. Pump up the ball, put the cardboard around the center, and then cellophane over the entire thing. So there we have the 2 extra cardboard strips on. Now I taped those quite a lot as I went along, because the cardboard in the middle combined with the cellophane makes these want to slide around quite a lot. So feel free to tape them. If you could, just stick to taping them on the outside and not so much in the middle, only because we're going to have to run a little blade through here to separate these, and we don't want any tape in there, because it's just going to make that a little bit more difficult. So yeah, so it doesn't really matter. You can see some of my things the lines are a little wider and some are thinner, and that is totally fine. So yeah, so that is the next step. So for covering our sphere, we are going to use brown gum strip, as we call it, or gummed paper. If anybody has a long memory, we would have used something similar to this in primary school growing up. So it basically has a dried gum on one side, and you just wet that and it becomes sticky. We used to use it a lot in primary school, I remember, with all different colours, not boring brown like this. But however, this dries really strong, and it's kind of like a sort of maybe like a not messy paper mache really, and it dries really strong. Now I'm showing you 2 here, so the roll comes in quite a big roll like that, so against my hand there, and this is one that's been used already, and you can see these little wet marks on the edges. So the only rule with this gum paper is not to leave it sitting on the table that you're working on. So that is rule number 1. The reason why is because if that happens, the wet gets in the edges, it activates the gum, and then you will struggle to take this apart, and you will end up getting things like that. So it'd almost be like wetting your masking tape as well. This one's not in too bad a shape, but if you get it quite bad, that'll ruin your entire roll of gum strip. So yeah, so you can roll off lots of pieces of this while you're sticking, and I'm going to show you putting that onto the sphere now. So here we go with covering our ball with our gum paper. So you're going to need to pre-cut lots of pieces of gum paper. I would rather rip them than cut them, only because these kind of fluffy edges, they tend to smooth down a lot better than if you cut them and they're sharp edges. So if you rip them, that's the best thing to do. So you're going to need a little bowl of water and a sponge, so it could be a car sponge or bath sponge or whatever. Also, if you are precious about your table, you're going to need something to do this process on. Now it's only water and the kind of water-based gum that's on the back of this. paper, but if you want to cover your table, that would probably be advisable. That can even be just a piece of cardboard, bit of a cereal box, whatever it is that you can just, you need a small space to wet these down. So basically get your ball ready to go onto your plant pot or whatever it is that you're going to use, and you're just going to run some water onto the shiny side of that paper, and that makes it sticky. So you're just going to place it down and smooth it down. Smoothing it down is really important because we want to cover this with a nice fabric afterwards. We don't want lots of paper sticking up everywhere. So as neat as you can, and you're just going to cover the entire ball with your paper. So you are going to cover the two spheres, or sorry, the two semi-spheres, and you're going to leave this gap in the middle because we're going to need to get a scissors or a blade in there to separate these two sides. So if you cover the tape in there, it'll dry too hard and we'll kind of struggle to get in there. And the last thing we want is to pierce your Pilates ball. So yeah, so just keep wetting. It doesn't need a lot of water to activate this. You'll have to just kind of sense it as you go. Too much water makes it, I guess, just pretty much just too wet really. We want these to dry pretty quickly, and then you don't want to leave too little water, or this literally just not going to stick. So you'll see straight away if it's not sticking because they'll have edges that are popping up. So just smooth it all down with your hand, and you should not really see where one ends and the other begins really there. So yeah, so you're going to cover both sides. Now at the moment we're only using brown gum paper. I am investigating using a white gum paper, which would be great if it works out. So hopefully you'll receive white and brown. If you only receive brown, once this is completely covered, it needs 3 layers. So for the strength, so if it's 3 layers, how are you going to tell the difference between 3 layers of brown? Well, you're going to have to take a biro or a marker, and once that is completely covered, you will pretty much kind of roughly colour it in. Just like that, like really rough, because once that is coloured in and you go to do your next layer, you'll see what is left to do. Now if the white works out, we'll do a layer of white and brown alternate so that you can see the difference. So hopefully the white works out. If you get white, then yeah, do that. If you get only brown, then yeah, you'll have to colour in between each layer. So 3 layers, leave in your middle. And another thing, don't be tempted to put water on the outside of this. When I'm working with kids, it happens in every single workshop, and it's usually somebody who is really creative that thinks it's very logical. And it kind of is logical, but it kind of ruins the tape. So if you are tempted to smooth down with wet, it just pretty much disintegrates the paper. So don't be tempted to do that. It'll also take twice as long to dry or longer. So only wet the shiny side, the gum side, and get both sides of your ball completely covered in brown paper. And yeah, that's it. So you can see there how wet my table gets, which is why you don't leave your roll of tape close. So you put that to one side and cut all your strips in advance. So there we go. I have half done. I only need to do half for the prototype, so I've only done half. Just a tip, just to make sure that you're not avoiding this cardboard. You don't want to go over this little edge here, but make sure you're adding the tape onto the cardboard that you've added, because we want this cardboard to become a part of this structure, and because this is going to give a little bit of edge strength to this costume. So just make sure you're not avoiding it completely. And that is my 3 layers done. Everything is pretty smoothed down. This is perfect. You don't need to be super like getting rid of creases and things like that. But you don't want to have like edges lifting off either. So something similar to this is pretty good. Yeah. So from here, you're going to want to leave your covered ball somewhere for it to dry. It's going to take a few hours probably for that to dry in properly before you're going to take that off your Pilates ball. So you can put it in a hot press or just leave it somewhere overnight out of the way. And then once that's completely dry, we're going to take it off the Pilates ball underneath. So I wrestled with mine quite a lot, and I ended up putting the scissors in underneath that cardboard and just giving it a little cut there, which is totally fine. But I guess if you're using the Pilates ball, if you leave the little valve exposed, then you can get the pump in there and let the air out a little bit. So that might be a tip for that. Just leave a little section uncovered by your cardboard, so that you can get at the valve in there. So don't worry if you have to wrestle with your semicircles to get them off the Pilates ball, and if you have to let the air out of the Pilates ball a little bit, that's probably quite helpful. I wrestled with mine a lot, and you can easily cover over that. If you have to rip it, if you have to cut it, that's all totally fine. It doesn't really compromise the strength, because if you get the gum paper straight back on that again to cover any errors or rips or cuts that you have to put in it to get it off the Pilates ball, that's totally fine. So just to let you know, you can be quite rough with them to get them off. So yeah. So once you have your pieces separated, you're going to remove all the cellophane that was on the inside, and you'll be left with a shiny gum surface in there. Remove as much as you can. And then we're going to reinforce. So these are not finished. You're not finished with the gum tape just yet. We're going to reinforce the edges all the way around, just to give that strength, because that is going to end up sitting on somebody's shoulders. And we're going to cut out this section here so that it sits and their head is inside here. So I've just popped mine back onto the polystyrene ball, which is probably the best way for you to work on these, to continue to use your ball underneath. So you'll receive a template that you'll just pop onto one side, really doesn't matter, and you're going to put that curved shape into it. You're going to cut that out, and you're going to reinforce that edge the same as you've reinforced. You're going to reinforce the edges here. So actually we've done this before we've reinforced the edges. We'll do all the reinforcing at the same time. So pop that down, draw around it, cut it out, and then reinforce all your edges. So that curve that you've cut in is so that this can sit nicely on the shoulders. Bearing in mind yours will be a bit bigger than mine, so that the head can fit nicely inside that shape. So I'm just starting to reinforce the edges by going over onto the inside like that, which will give it like a double strength. It'll also cover over if there's any tape there. At this point you can also have a double check. If you lift that up to the light, you will see the parts where you maybe have forgotten or missed. If it's only little bits like this, I wouldn't worry. So that just shows that there's a lot less pieces there. If there's a lot of that, then you might just need to put another little layer onto that, so you can just double check it by the light. Also, because this curve is quite small, I suppose, in comparison with how wide your pieces are, you might just have to cut these a little bit smaller. I'll leave that to your own discretion, but if you cut them in half, sorry, I'm just folding this, but if you cut it in half like that, you would get around those edges a lot easier than if it was full like that. So let me just actually do one of those. Yeah, so I just cut that one in half there. So if you put the smaller pieces on, obviously they will go on a lot easier than twice the width on that curve. So that's just a little tip there. So you can easily just chop these to whatever size you need them to be. So there is our semicircle, all completely reinforced. You can see I used the narrower pieces in there because I just thought that was easier. And then it's reinforced all the way around. You can see there on the inside. Now, if you could please put some extra pieces here, because that is the part that's going to be attached to the body. If anything's going to take a bit of a hammering, it's that part there. So if you could put a couple of extra pieces on that, just to make that super strong. So those corners, basically, they need a wee bit more than the rest. So I have just put the cardboard sphere back onto my polystyrene ball. It's the best way to really work on them. And so what we're going to do is we're going to cover the outside of these with silver square sequin fabric. So these are supposed to look a bit like a disco ball, so it's kind of like a artistic license here. We're going to put some square sequin fabric. It's the easiest way that I could think to create these, rather than cutting out, you know, millions of squares and sticking them on. This was kind of like a fool's way of doing it. So what I have is not the correct fabric here. The stuff that I ordered for you guys was like hen's teeth, so you got the last 6 meters in all of UK and Europe, believe it or not. So I have a different kind of sequin fabric. It's round dotty sequin fabric. Yours comes in like little squares, holographic squares, so it looks a bit more like disco ball. So what you would do is, if you would measure the, I suppose, the half circumference of the ball. I'm only conscious of being wasteful with the fabric because there was so little of it available anywhere. So I think there's about a half a meter per costume. So you want to get this right. So if you measure the circumference, and you don't have to use a measuring tape, you can use string or you can use the fabric itself, which is what I did. And then cut a square. So I have my square cut already. It's there ready to go. And you're going to place that on top of the ball, and we're going to glue one side, a little bit of one side, and then we're going to glue a little bit of the other side. So I'm just going to put my camera up on the tripod and I'm going to video that. Also, you would need to have your glue gun plugged in at this stage because you're going to use your glue gun to stick this down. So just a quick update on the square sequin fabric that we ordered. They cancelled our order, so obviously there was none left in the whole of the UK. And the nearest place we can get it is China, but we don't want to go that far. So you're going to be using a silver sequin, the same as what I have shown you in the red. So it'll be identical to that, only silver. So there you go. So just so you can see what I'm doing, I'm just going to tilt that a little bit towards you. What you'll need is a little bit of foam to help you to dab down your fabric with your glue, because the sequin fabric is a mesh, so it is basically the glue will come through that really easily and get straight to your fingers. So yes, you've got your square. You're going to pop that over, and like you're stretching, I don't know, stretching a canvas as we used to do in college, you would always do opposites. You would glue your opposites first, and then, so if you were doing the left side, then you would stretch and do the right side. Then you would do top and bottom, back, front, and then you would get rid of the creases as you go. So you basically have to do top, bottom, left, right, so that they're in a cross opposite each other, and then you do the bits in between. So I hope that makes sense. But if you just start on one side, make sure your fabric is sitting okay, that you haven't gone off and left no fabric on one side. And you literally, this has a wee bit of stretch in it, and I'm sure the square sequin one that you get will have the same stretch. It's got probably a little bit of stretch more one way than the other, so you can kind of play with that. So you're just going to start on one of your edges. Now you will have waste with this, but we're going to use that up in the costume, the fabric costume that comes underneath, so we won't really be wasting. So with our glue gun, you have to put the tip of your glue gun always against whatever it is that you're gluing. Again, we've got a bit of gravity here, so you're going to have to be really careful with spreading that glue out really well. Just do a small little bit at a time. That is absolutely loads. And then just pop that down, and then use your little bit of foam, just so that you're really careful. If it was me, I'd be straight in there with my hands, but my hands are really used to the glue now, so I don't really get burns very often. But for you guys, just dab that, really careful. If you put too much glue on this, what'll happen is, for one, you could get your hands burned. For two, the glue comes through, and as you're dabbing down like this, it just makes that edge really, really ugly. So if you see the glue coming through and leaving a mark on the outside, you've put too much glue on. So you just need to be sure that you're putting the right amount on. On mine, I can see a little bit of glue, but that is fine. We could always cover over the edges a bit afterwards. So once you've that done, you need to do the exact opposite. So flip this around, and you're going to stretch that fabric out and glue it there. So don't leave it loose, try and stretch it out as you go. Be a wee bit tricky, but get that glue down and then stretch that out as much as you can and get that part glued. So here we go. I'm spreading that glue out a lot. All we're going to do is the edges here, by the way. We're not going to be gluing all over the whole thing because that's just going to take too long. We really don't need it. So make sure that you stretch it a little bit. Now you can't dab because you're stretching the fabric out, so you're actually just going to have to wait for that glue to set, because if you let that go, obviously it's going to pull back on itself. So just going to wait for that to dry in, and that will be your two opposites done. So you obviously at this stage you need to have something really secure to put this sitting on. So make sure whatever it is down there is not wobbling, or you could have difficulties. So it needs to be quite secure. So that's my left and my right done there, you can see. So now I would do my front and back. So the front is, I guess, just depends where the front is for you. But for me, I guess it's this curved bit there, which I'm going to do first. You can glue it any which way, but this might just be an easy way to get that first bit done. If you spread your glue out really easily, really well, you should be able to move on pretty quickly with these. So there we go, with 3 sides done now. And do our last little bit. Hopefully your square fabric has as much stretch as mine. Otherwise, just stick them in the best possible way that you can. So there we go. So you can see we have all the little folds in between. So we're going to try and stretch them out. These little ones here, we're going to try and stretch them out as much as we can. And if we can't, we'll cut them off and we'll just glue them down. The good thing with sequin fabric is that it, because it's kind of glittery, it kind of averts the eye away from any wee errors that you might make. So no pressure. There we go. So make sure they're stuck before you let go, so they don't pull back. Yeah, so here we have these. So for me, looking at that, I again would go in the middle of what's there and I would glue that down, and then I would deal with these little bits afterwards. So this just requires a lot of patience, I suppose. To be honest, I think most of the carnival world is quite simple as long as you have patience. So pull that down. You can see as I'm sticking those down that I try to keep the fabric away from that glue until I'm ready to stick that down. If you can do that, you won't run into too many problems. So that is good to go. So again, just making sure that is done. So then I would do the opposite. So you get what I mean, I'm sure, at this stage. So for these little bits, these are the tricky ones. So you're going to want to cut up that slice until it gets to the smooth point there, and then you would stick one of them down. So, and you would have to go up a wee bit on this now, not just the edges, so up a little bit up there, if you can see there, and then stretch that down. And once that's stuck, I'll take a little bit of this off. Spreading this out is quite important. Now you're probably going to get puckers in the one when you're doing it, and that is totally fine. There we go. So I've left a little gap there, but that's alright, no big deal. So if you're neat enough, that should be, I mean, on the video now it might look a little bit obvious, but when that's a costume and that's dancing around, you're not gonna see these joints. So yeah, so you would just continue to do that all the way around with these little edges, trying to stretch them out as much as possible. Whatever you've got left, you're gonna cut and put that on. Okay. So this is the last bit to be done on this one, which is our curved edge. I'm just going to do all of that at the one time, making sure to spread that glue out really well. And keeping the fabric away until you're ready to stretch it down. And hold and wait. And so once you've got all your edges glued down and you've got your little slices done, we're just going to trim off the excess fabric here. Now when we're trimming it off, we're going to leave a little bit of extra because we're going to fold it in to the inside. We're not going to cut flush with the edge. We're going to leave a little bit of extra, fold it all into the inside so our outer parts are nice and neat. Okay, so once that's done. So I haven't stuck all of this down, but you'll get the idea. So this is what I mean by our outer edges. We're going to leave a little bit of extra. There's no real exact amount. So for this, because this is kind of quite wobbly, you need to be really careful with your fingers on this one. So you're just going to get a little bit of glue on the inside and you're going to fold those over. Again, use your little foam thing to back those down and make sure that they're stuck really well. It doesn't matter if these aren't too neat, because we're going to put a piece inside here as well over that edge, so don't worry about that. Okay, so that'll be all our edges will be covered in. So the next bit we're going to do is put some of the same fabric on the inside. Now we're not going to do all the way into the inside because that's just going to be way too difficult. So we're just going to do a band around the outside. Now a couple of tips for this. After you folded in your edges in here, make sure they're all stuck down and there's nothing crazy sticking out, because when it comes to putting this stuff down, you're going to want to have a fairly smooth surface. Now you can use your glue gun to get those down. If you just get underneath them, give them a glue and then use the glue gun's tip to bat those down, or else obviously you got your little bit of foam and get them all smoothed down. So you're going to cut a strip. You've got square sequin, so actually it's a wee bit easier than the circle sequin because it kind of naturally wants to go in a straight line anyway. So you'll cut a strip approximately 3 inches, so you could count the sequence and cut along the straight line, so it's going to be a lot easier than these wiggly sequins that I have here. So cut your strip and then lay it on the inside. What we're going to do is we're going to glue down the outer parts of it first, and we're going to put the inner parts in afterwards, only because this is wider out here than it is in there. So if you start sticking on the inside, it could send you off in the wrong direction. Also, obviously you can't use your ball for doing the inside, so what I would suggest is that you get something behind. So I have my plant pot there and my ball, so that I can just sit that up against that so that won't wiggle around too much, and it's quite solid. So measure your piece. You can do it in 2 pieces if it's easier, and start on the outside. So if you had a lot of excess fabric, you could just leave it all sitting in there as long as this edge is ready to go, and then you would just fold that back because you know you're all in line, and get this edge glued down and get that folded over and secured, and then just do a little bit at a time, another little bit, and then turn your circle around, do your next bit, and etc, until you've done your whole thing all the way around. So that's one piece of mine stuck. So it's not stuck in here, it's only stuck on the inside in there. Okay, so little edge there, but you can glue that down as well if it's not too difficult. Afterwards, what we'll do is we'll paint paint this bit that's in here, because you got to remember the person's head is here and they're going to be wearing a bandana in the same sparkly fabric, so the whole thing should give the illusion that the whole thing is completely done. So yes, you don't need to worry about that inside bit. I'm going to paint that in. So the next part is we're going to add a foam strip around the neck. This is our little neckline that's here. So you're going to add that strip all the way around that edge. I have just started by gluing down the end of it. And we're going to leave this bit hanging off, because what's going to happen is we're going to add fabric to this bit that's hanging off, and that is going to go down onto the chest as a way of keeping these secure so they don't come off. So again, just gluing a little bit at a time. You get in underneath there, glue that little bit down, and glue another little bit down, a little bit down, until you're all the way to the other side. And you can leave a little edge there, as you can see, of the sequin. You don't have to go right all the way to the edge, but you want to get that stuck down really well and really flat. And lastly, for this part of the make, we're just going to paint this part in here where your sequin ends with white paint. Bearing in mind you're working with silver, so white is the best option for painting inside here. You'll be painting with an acrylic paint, so please be careful not to get that on your clothing, because that does not come out. So that's the end of the make for the disco ball head pieces. The next part of this make is a sewing make, so for the moment that's as far as we're going with these. So I'm going to move on with showing you the next part of our disco ball boys costume. This part is a bit making and a bit sewing, so I don't know if you'll get both, or if you'll just be doing the sewing or just be doing the making, so you can take what you will of this video. So I'm going to start with the foam part of it, and follow up with the sewing. I've gone ahead and already cut out the shape for the neck piece for the disco neck. Now you'll have to excuse my terrible oval. You'll receive a proper template for this, and I just want to remind you about safety and how to cut foam properly. So you'll need a blade, you'll need something to protect your table, and you'll receive the cardboard template in this shape with the circle in the middle. And you're going to use both of these, so don't discard your circle once you've got that cut out. Now these are going to be covered with fabric, so really you don't have to be an amazing foam cutter to get this one right, which is brilliant. So you'll place your template down, obviously, and draw around it. Ballpoint pen is the best thing you can use to draw onto the foam. Just always double check as you're lifting your template that the mark is actually going through onto your foam. Sometimes the little tip of the ballpoint pen just stops moving, and then you've been drawing all your circles and nothing is there. So once you lay your template down on your foam, just lay it so that you can fit as many of these in as possible, because your sheets of foam will come quite large. So what I would recommend, if you're feeling not confident about cutting, that if you imagine the green is my main foam, you can rough cut your circle first outside your template, and then you can cut your proper lines afterwards. Otherwise, just jump straight in and get cutting. So always keep your hand out of the direction of your blade, so don't have your hand here and cutting towards it. So always away from your hand, holding things in place. What I tend to do is, if you've got a small piece of foam, you can move that around so that you're not trying to get yourself maneuvered around. So just move your foam around, do your next bit. You can keep your blade in, do your next bit, keep your blade in, and do the next bit. And that's kind of the best way to do it. And then for your center circle, I'll just cut another one. So get your blade out. So just make sure you're applying enough pressure. See, I don't lift my blade out at all. It saves a bit of time really. And then cut a little bit at a time. So just giving you a wee demo there on that. And as I said, you are going to keep this center circle. Okay, so just double check that it's popped out alright. If you're getting lots of little, what I would call catches on this, like little nicks coming out of it, it means your blade needs to be changed. So probably by the time you've cut all these out, when you're getting towards the end, your blade will start getting a little bit caught in the foam, so it means you need to change your blade. So you'll be left with the outer ring and the center circle. So the outer ring is going to sit on the neck, and this part here is going to sit on the back of your costume. Now that'll make sense in a minute. So we've already done our disco neck piece, our head piece rather. And what you're going to do is you're going to take the glue gun and you're going to glue it onto this outer circle. And you'll be doing a little bit at a time because you need this to be stuck really well. And you're just going to stick that down, and then the last two little bits of foam, I'm going to stick those down as well. Okay, so that's the first thing. So I'm going to get my glue gun plugged in, and we're going to get going with gluing that. So you're going to try and find your middle point at the back. You can just do it by eye. I might actually, I marked it on the template, sure. Mine is really rough anyway, as usually is when I'm figuring things out. So yeah, so I'll mark the center point, and you'll obviously have this all painted and covered in here. I've only half done it for the prototype because this red is not the color we're going to be using. So you start in the center and get your glue down and spread that glue around really well so you don't have some crazy overspill, and get that first bit down and just hold that in place. And you can't move on to the next bit until you know that is definitely stuck, because if you start moving on and that lifts up, it's very difficult actually. For some reason, once a glue lifts away from itself, it's really hard to get that re-glued. It's like the hot glue doesn't like it when it's put onto something, a dry glue. So you need to try and get this right the first time. No pressure. So once you are clear that that is fully, probably another 20 seconds, I'm just going to bash on. So you would just continue spreading that glue. Really important to spread that glue around. Get that stuck. And just mind your fingers as you're doing this, because the glue can spill over the edges and catch your fingers if you're not paying close attention. Now I'll be going a bit faster than you would. I'm just really used to this process, so you would probably take a little bit more time in getting this right. So you get both sides done all the way down, and again you're going to feel like you're spending half your time just holding it, but that is definitely the nature of hot glue. I spend half my career holding foam in place. So I'm going to do the other side now, and then we're going to crack on with getting the back part onto this. Once your glue is completely dried in, you're just going to turn this around to the back, and then we're going to add this piece on the back there. Now I'll mark on the template where that is, where exactly you should be gluing, but for now I'm just gonna go for it. Now you can either hold that in place or flip it upside down, whichever way you are happy to work. And that little piece at the back is actually going to sit over the person's, in between their shoulder blades essentially, and then we're going to run some little straps from that around to the front so that it pulls tightly to the body and gives this headpiece a bit of structure. Now I know that my headpiece is smaller than the one you'll be doing, so maybe once you do the first one of this and it's dried in, just try it on and see if you think that needs any more foam to keep it in place. If mine is quite solid, it's not really going to go anywhere, but if yours is wobbling around loads, maybe you could just feed that back to me, and maybe we can look at putting another bit of foam in there to give it a bit of extra structure. But yeah, you can just let me know how you get on. So that is fairly well stuck, so that's what you'll end up with And again, this goes to the front and that goes to the back. I'm not going to look at that for now. So the next part is to put our elastic straps onto this piece so that it can stay on the body. Here we have one long piece of elastic, and I've just pinned it onto the back here to show you. Now you can pin it as well if you like, if it's a bit more easy to get that done. Obviously you could actually put this elastic on before you add this to the neck if that's easier. That's perfect. And we're just gonna send it out in a bit of a different direction, because obviously this is going to go around the arms at the front and this is going to go around the other side, so you want them at that little kind of angle. So again, you're just going to put your glue down, spread it around. Now if you're afraid of getting your hand burned, just grab a little bit of foam and just rub that down with the foam, so keeping your fingers well away. Same on the other side. You see a bit of glue overspill there, so that could easily catch your fingers and give you a burn. So once that is done, you obviously hopefully haven't pinned your glued your pin, so just pop that back and get that little bit that you had left. So you can see I take my hands out of the way straight away, bend that down, and then the glue gun is pushing it out of the way. Give that a little glue, and again a little bit of foam. You'll have plenty of wee bits of offcuts of foam after you cut out these circles at the edges, because you'll have these corners, curvy corners lying around. So once that is super well stuck, we're going to reinforce it. So I have just cut another piece of foam just in a little curvy shape. The shape of this really doesn't matter as long as it is big enough to catch these parts, just to really trap that elastic in there, because this is going to get a lot of pulling when people are taking this on and off. So just glue over your elastic. And pop that down on top. Be careful not to get too close to the edges with your glue, so that you don't end up with a big overspill and it catches your hands as you're holding it. It's happened many times. So just hold that in place until it's pretty well stuck, and that's the beginning part of your straps. So I'll make sure that is pretty well stuck before I move on. I'll give you the exact measurements of this elastic, so you don't go wrong. Actually, I might cut the elastic. Actually, I'll give you the elastic, yeah. So I will cut those in advance, so you'll receive the elastic already cut in the right length. That's the back part done. It's pretty secure. So now, well, at the minute I'm just going to go and check my mannequin and figure out where we're going to put these onto the front. So basically we'll be putting them on the front like that. So these will actually go underneath your underarms, and so your arms will be coming out here, and this will catch underneath your underarms to give this a bit of strength. So I'll mark on the template exactly where you're going to stick these and exactly the length that you're going to use. So just to give you an idea of where we're at now with our backpack, our little backpack structure, we've got our stretchy elastic coming out. That is really well stuck down there. That'll go under the arm of the performer, and we will attach them at the front there, and there should be enough stretch in this elastic to catch underneath and for somebody to be able to get their arm in and out of that. I've just marked my foam. I know you can probably barely see those lines there, but they're enough for me to see where I'm going to glue this elastic down. Now for extra added strength, I've decided to put these on the front and then flip that little bit in behind so that there's extra strength there if this was ever to be pulled off this direction. So if somebody pulls it out the way, I don't expect that's going to happen because we're going to be putting a fabric layer over this, but always better to be safe than sorry, especially with things like straps, because this has got quite a job of holding on our our neck piece, including our head at the back, our sparkly semicircle. So yeah, so we're just going to run that up, and then I'm going to flip that in behind and glue it in behind as well. So I will mark on the template that you receive those lines so that you can follow those really easily. So that's off the mannequin now, and I'm just going to glue that down. Pins and foam are definitely a match made in heaven, especially when you're trying to stick awkward things. So I've just pinned them down at the top so that they don't wiggle around everywhere. And I'm just going to run a line of glue there. Pop that down. Same on this side. I'm going by my little guidelines there as well, and you probably can't see on the foam, but I can see it. They're done, you can pop those pins off and come around your back and see that your elastic's going to fold over there. Again, use your foam for backing those down so you don't burn your fingers. I don't feel a thing anymore. So there we go. That's our little straps. Simple little structure. So the next part, that is the making part of that done. The next part of this is to make the fabric that's going to sit over this, and it's going to have lots of strips of fabric coming down from it, which is going to give this piece a lot of really nice movement. So I pre-cut and sewn the rough shape that we're gonna add to this. So this one is actually, I've made this pattern a wee bit wrong, so I'm probably going to add a little bit extra in there. It's way too thin there, and that's just going to sit on the back, and these parts will become cuffs, and we'll put a little elastic on these as well so they grab around the wrist, and we'll just be gluing that on after that is sewn. So we sew on all our strips and then we glue that on, and then that piece will be completely finished. So for our sewers, you'll receive a black polycotton fabric and a template that is, well, a little bit different to this. As I said, it'll be a little bit thicker at the front, and all you're going to do is draw around that template, cut it out, and then you're going to hem all your edges, and that is literally just one fold over and a zigzag stitch, which if you've done any other videos with me, you'll know is my go-to for this entire project. It saves a lot of time instead of double sewing, and you can just zigzag over those little bits that you think are going to fray. So for this, you're also going to need a fairly large cotton mat, and you'll receive some silver fabrics, and they'll actually be ripstop, which is the fabric that tents are made from, and then you'll lay that down on your cotton mat, and you'll use a rotary cutter to cut all your pieces. So yeah, first thing we're going to do is make our underlay fabrics essentially. So yeah, so that's a simple, just cut out your fabric, zigzag your edges, and then we'll move on to doing our rotary cutting on the mat. I forgot to mention for our sewers that at the end of this cuff we'll also be adding a little elastic so that can go over the hand and stay on. It's not going to have to be very exact, as long as it stays on the hand or grips onto the hand, that is the best thing. So you can put that on once you have hemmed all your edges, and I'll give you the elastics for that. I'll have them pre-cut so you don't have to stress about that, and just pop those on. Here I have a piece of fabric ready to rotary cut. Now I have taped the corners just because I think that might be something that you might want to do, especially if you haven't done much rotary cutting before. It just keeps the fabric from moving around. However, if your rotary cutter is new, which it should be, you know, the fabric shouldn't really move because there shouldn't be much bluntness in your rotary cutter. So you'll have your large enough cutting mat there, and just cut a piece that is roughly the size of the cutting mat. Really, it's probably the easiest way to do it. You can do these in many parts. If you find smaller pieces of fabric easier to use, that's totally fine. So there I have my rotary cutter there ready to go. If you haven't used one before, you should have seen the safety video. So this is I don't know if this will be the same kind of one that you have, but you've got your rotary blade in there and you've got a protective cover. So you have to take back your protective cover and run up and down your fabric. Now, I haven't given you any template for this, so you're going to have to freestyle it essentially. So I'm just going to give you a demo and hopefully you take to it fine. If you're really struggling with this, just give us a shout and let us know. I know very competent makers who just cannot rotary cut, so sometimes people get it, sometimes people don't, and that's totally fine. So just let us know how you get on. I'm going to jump around the back of my table here so that I don't get in the way. So I just released my little cover there, and you just start at the edge and you can take your time. I'm just going to go a little diagonal. Now your fabric is probably not going to move in the same way as this one because this is like a stretchy fabric, so it's a bit of a nightmare to rotary cut. Yours is a plastic, so you can see I'm just kind of, there's no definite size for these, but I am leaving a gap. I'm not rotary cutting all the way to the end. It's just keep going and going and going. Oh, another thing that you really need to be sure of is that there is nothing on your cotton mat to get in the way of what you're doing. So I'm actually just going to finish off there, and then always put your cover back on your cutter, because if this gets any kind of a little nick on it, they're useless. So yeah, so that's my pieces there. If you get a wee nick in it and you're rolling away, you'll always have a little point everywhere that hasn't cut, and that would drive you mad. So you'll receive two different kinds of the ripstop fabric to rotary cut. One has a black back on it and the other has a silver back on it. So you'll get half and half that fabric essentially. So however much fabric you get, if you divide that by the amount of costumes that you have, and then that is how much you have to rotary cut for each costume. So hopefully that makes sense. Once you've got all your rotary cutting done, you would sew these onto the edge of your polycotton that you have already hemmed. So you would sew a line at the edge, then you would sew another line here, and then you go to the other side and go in the opposite direction like this one, so that the fringes can hang down both sides of the arm. So you'll probably be looking at getting one all the way along there at the edge, probably another, probably two lines on each side. But again, you can judge that. If you're left with loads of fabric, you might as well put more into it, because for this kind of a costume, more is more. That is my arm strips sewn on. So I just did two. I did one at the very edge of the fabric, which, let's see if we can get under there. Yes, that's right at the edge of the fabric. And then I did one in the middle, and then I did the same on the other side. I did the other one, this one in the middle, and then actually I didn't do a full line at the edge, but there should be another line at the edge going across the back. And actually that is loads. So I think just your edge, your two in the middle and your edge on the other side is plenty for this one. And just a note on your rotary cutting, if you're taking to it fine and you're doing it a lot, it would probably be really good to space out doing the rotary cutting, because it can be quite hard on the hands. So you don't want to end up getting like a repetitive strain in your hands from rotary cutting. So if this is your costume and you're going to be doing all of these strips, just spread your time out well so that you don't end up with a sore hand. So that costume is just starting to come together. Now I've made a little alteration in our design, and I've cut a split in the shoulder because the fabric was gonna go all the way up to here and it just looked funny, and then our strips didn't fall properly. So what I've done is cut a split in it, and it gets attached to the back there. I hope that makes sense. So this would have been the piece that would be stuck at the front there, so we've just cut that split. That's what it used to look like, just straight. So cut a split there and then run one piece around the back and one piece around the front. So obviously when you're sewing your strips on and you do the edge here, you would have to run one around the neckline as well, because that looks really daft. So you would just send it around the neckline that's there as well. I decided to finish off this costume to completion, even though it's not the same fabric. Your fabric will be a little bit duller than this, but even though it's the wrong fabric, I decided just to finish this off so you could see the finished article. So I just went around the neckline there as well. Now for me, there's a bit of a gap there. If you have extra fabric, you could put a little bit in there just to cover over those wee bits, but not necessary either. If you don't have enough, that's fine. And that's it done. I think probably like each group will have a leader, so somebody can wear this one without the red piece there. So there's the back as well. So I just you would glue this on now with the glue gun onto the back here. You won't have these. I put them on because a leader will be wearing it, so they won't have this foam thing, so it'll just be like a neck piece, a fabric neck piece. So you would basically, you'd pin this in place onto your foam, and then fold it back and get some glue gun in there and just fold that over and wait for that to dry in. You won't need to be gluing it everywhere. You could probably just glue here and here, so kind of like the shoulders, and then leave this bit flapping in there. That's not going to make any difference. And then just glue onto your back part here. However much fabric you have there, just glue that on. I think there's the end of the black there. So you'll have a little bit to glue on there as well, onto the edge of your circular back piece there. And as I say, you won't have these bits in the middle. So there you go.